What happened in Muskegon was clean fraud that was uncovered, the police got involved with. And so what we have here with us today is the MIGOP, the Michigan Republican Party's election integrity team. And I'm really glad to hear that Chairman Christina Cromwell put together an election integrity team to talk about these. So I'd like to invite up Braden Giacobazzi, who's been with us many times before. He was on the election integrity force before this, before he was elevated to the election integrity team, and also Phil O'Halloran. And both these guys are real warriors in putting their time and effort into election integrity. So I would like to welcome them, and let me see if I can get your presentation here.
Thank you, Matt. Phil and I just won a lawsuit with a few other plaintiffs against the Secretary of State. Well, he figures that out. And it was for the reasons that he was just saying. The legislature is supposed to make laws, right? And what the Secretary of State was found guilty of doing was legislating as Secretary of State. She would make rules for people to follow during the elections, which were blatantly illegal and against the law, right? And so what the judges found was that that was true. And if you watch the video, which I encourage you guys to do, the MIGOP just put out a press release, and if you watch the video of the court trial, the Secretary of State's lawyer actually gets up on the stage or gets up at the podium, like this podium right here, and argues to a panel of 3 appellate court judges. And essentially, she tells them, if the legislature made a law that we didn't think was any good, we just wouldn't follow it. And the judges, all 3 of them, questioned her on this to try and understand if they're really hearing what they think they're hearing. And very clearly they were. And so we won unanimously in a 3-0 unanimous decision. So anyway, we want to thank Ann Howard, the amazing attorney. By the way, that's another great part of this story. Ann Howard and a guy named Lou. I don't know if he wants his name out, so I don't know. I'm not going to say it. But we have a team behind the scenes. And Ann Howard, this attorney who has no background whatsoever in election law. And because of her diligence and our team here, we were able to beat the Secretary of State. That's how absurd their case was and how badly they're running their elections. All right. Thank you, Matt. Here we go. All right. So we are with District 9, and one of our things is trying to empower the voters, right? And with MIGOP, we want to make sure one of the major goals of the Karamo administration is election integrity, and that's something that's been sorely lacking from past administrations. It's really good to see some of our colleagues here. It's good to see you, Jonathan, Joe. It's really great to see everybody here, the gang, because all this stuff is stuff that everybody needs to care about. This isn't about one team or another team, where we all need to be in this together. So we're hoping that you guys will volunteer, donate, and do anything you can to help secure these elections for 2024, because that's the make or break moment for this country. So my name is Braden Giacobazzi. I started with Election Integrity Force, and now I'm at the Michigan GOP. This is Dr. Phil O'Halloran. Did you want to say anything before we get rolling?
Well, yeah, just want to thank our lawyer that Braden just talked about earlier, Ann Howard. When you have a election, when you have a real estate and bankruptcy law attorney from Southfield going up against the Prince of Darkness, which is Mark Elias. Mark Elias law firm, the Elias Group, he sent 2 of his partners to try to shore up the Secretary of State against, our team. And bullying tactics, sorry. But I just wanted to really thank everybody involved. So, and then as far as, let me hand it back to Braden, because we've got a set thing here.
Yeah, so tonight we want to talk about the voter registration fraud that was uncovered in Muskegon. And this is the tale of many people having to work together, not knowing necessarily that they were, that never happened in other cities. And we don't know why, but in Muskegon, everything came together. And I feel like if this happened in multiple cities around the state, we would have a lot more success. But everybody's afraid to do it. But in Muskegon, they weren't. So I want to make sure that before we get rolling, that we thank the city police there for actually taking this case on, and the clerks who actually, when they saw something wrong, they actually went to the police rather than just talk about it amongst themselves. We also have Chris Kyla here, who we're going to bring up. I don't know where he went. During the Q&A. Hey, Chris. So we'll bring him up during the Q&A because he plays a pivotal role in this as well, and he can talk about his friend Keith as well. So moving forward here, Christina Karama, we did a press conference, and one of the quotes that she left was, who were they prepared to shoot? What were they defending? The Democrat Party has a position that American citizens shouldn't have semi-automatic weapons, yet an organization that Joe Biden and the Democrat Party helps to fund has an office with semi-automatic weapons, custom pistols, and suppressors. I love the silence in the room because it's startling and nobody saw this coming. So here we go. So we have to go back all the way to 2020. Now I know that we're in 2023 now and a lot of us want to move forward, including Phil and I, but you can't just ignore something this big. Okay, back in 2020 we found irregularities up and down the board, right? We all know that that election was not the most trustworthy election in history, right? But even with all of those irregularities, we were still surprised when we came upon what happened in Muskegon. How many of you guys before this fall had ever heard of this? Like 5, 10 people out of 50? So we're talking about maybe 10% of the people, and you guys are plugged in and in the know. Almost nobody knew about this issue, and this involves suppressors and guns and burner phones and specialized weapons, and nobody even knew about it. Why is that? So we're going to go into some of that today. So I would like to play a video here, but I'm not sure how the audio is going to come out for you guys. Is it going to work? Nope. All right, well, Phil, do you want to speak to this? This is a Charlie Kirk video. So, yep.
Yeah, so basically what happened was we should probably go back to the beginning because a lot of you maybe don't understand what the story's about. Does everybody here feel like they have a basic understanding of what the allegations are, the investigation was about? Does anybody not know much about it?
Yeah, just
okay. Yeah, so we can probably just start from the beginning, but it sounds like a lot of people know much of the story, so we'll go into some detail. So what happened was back around October 8th in 2020, a woman walked into the Muskegon clerk's office and brought in quite a number. We don't know exactly how many in this particular event, but she brought in multiple registration forms. Okay, so these are new registrations, people wanting to register to vote. And the clerks looked at them and went through this group of registration forms and noticed that some of them multiple ones were in the same handwriting. And they looked into it a little further detail, and they found that many of the addresses were not actually real addresses. So the address didn't exist, or the address was the same address as the high school down the street, or the post office, things like that. Maybe it was on the 19th floor of a 14-story building. Something just didn't add up. So these are experienced clerks, so they knew what to look for, and they spotted irregularities. At this point, they brought in the police. The police came in. They did a pretty, what sounds like, from the police report, it looks like a very thorough investigation. It went on several days. They then notified the state police, or I think the Attorney General's office. They got the state police involved, and then they did a very, very thorough investigation. We have the report here. It's it's like 60-page report, a lot of detail here in this, and right down to tapping, they were literally tapping into people's communications. They were following, tailing them, and a lot of kind of stuff you'd see in a detective movie or whatever. And ultimately, they had a raid, and the raid was in Southfield. And this was well, there were actually 3 raids, but the biggest one was Southfield. And that's where they found, when they went in, they found the things that Braden just alluded to, which is the weaponry, and these were semi-automatic weapons. Some of them were actually automatic, and they determined that they had somehow done the paperwork for a full automatic. So what do they need automatic weapons for? And now, granted, this is what the Democrats always say to us. What do you need that for? To go hunting. So, well, let's turn it back on them and say, if you guys are registering people to vote, why do you need these automatic weapons? Why do you need burner phones? Why do you need cash cards, anonymous payment cash cards, so that they can pay people for various things relating to the, why can't you actually have a good, solid record, a log of everything? Why is that? So these are the questions the police asked, and it should be pointed out, too, that the initial police warrant, okay, it was a search warrant application to a judge, which the judge signed. And by the way, they signed 3 of these. But the one that we're keying on in Southfield, the crime that they were investigating and that they felt they had probable cause to investigate was MCL 168.933A. And that is called election fraud by forgery. So it occurred to us that at roughly the same time, within a month or so, that our 16 electors were doing something completely legal, legal, which was simply signing these electoral alternate forms. At the same time this was happening, which would later result in a prosecution, which is ongoing, as you know right now, by Dana Nessel. At that same time, police officers had probable cause for election fraud by forgery. So why is it that Dana Nessel is blatantly selecting a fake crime to prosecute when she completely suppressed and ignored what all indications were real crimes back then? So the indications that at least the police officers believed they were real enough that they raided the Southfield office. So this is something we have been focusing on heavily, and we call out to Dana Nessel to stop this fake forgery investigation that's going on right now.
So what Phil is saying is that Dana Nessel absolutely understands how to prosecute forgery if she wants to, right? What we found, or what was found in this investigation in Muskegon, was that there were probably 10,000 or so, give or take 2,000, suspect or fraudulent voter registration forms, right? That seems like a good justification for an investigation, and yet it seems to have been covered up. But when you talk about these 16 electors who are just doing their job, one of them, Marion, is in the crowd here today. Dana Nessel immediately jumps on that and turns that into a huge investigation. But it's not just that. In the 2022 election, many of you may recall, during the primary, there were petitioners going out trying to get signatures for various candidates on the Republican ballot, and they got illegitimate signatures. So essentially you have a forgery, right? And so Dana Nessel is going after those 2 patsies who did commit a crime, right? But comparatively, it's much more minor compared to what's going on with an entire 2020 election. But there's a video here we were going to play of her explaining how forgeries are bad and how we need to prosecute them right away, and how they're doing a manhunt for one of the people because they couldn't find them, right? So she absolutely understands how to selectively prosecute people when she feels like it. But when it doesn't help her career or maybe the candidates she likes, she ignores it. All right. So with that in mind, we just want to give you a little bit of a timeline here on what happened in 2023 after this had been covered up and nobody really knew about it, and everybody got busy with all these other things, all these other problems in the elections and trying to win in 2024 and all these other things. And then this got uncovered again, thanks in large part to a man named Chris Kyla.
Right. So a lot of people ask, how did this come to light? Well, every now and then in our history, we see people who are, maybe just the unsung heroes. They happen to be in the right place at the right time. But the most important thing is they do the right thing. And the individual who brought this whole thing to light is a man named Chris Kyla, and he happens to be sitting right over there. Chris, do you want to stand up for a second? So Chris is a resident of Muskegon, the same place we're talking about, and so he noticed a very, just kind of like an obscure, very small, brief news blip back around late October of 2020 in the local news, on one of the local news reports. And so he spotted it and thought something doesn't smell right about this report, because they were saying that there was registration, possible registration fraud, but it turned out that it was nipped in the bud and nothing happened. Everything was fine. Move along, So he didn't really buy into that, and he decided that he was going to look into it at a later time. So as Braden referred to, once 2020 happened, the headlines exploded, alternative media exploded, and it was just the most, we'll never be the same probably after what we went through with that whole period after the election. So this little tiny blip story got sort of kicked off out of the radar screen. But another fella who is a friend of Chris's, his name is Keith Hinkle. He's from Grand Rapids. Keith kind of kept badgering Chris, as the way I heard it, and saying, Chris, you got to go after that little blip story and do a little further investigation. So ultimately, fast forward a couple of years, and sure enough, that the two of them were working together. Chris ended up going to see and actually met with the chief investigator, Anderson, I think his name is, of the Michigan State Police, sat down with him and was able to get the incident number for this investigation from him. So that's critical right there. He gave that to Keith, and then Keith Hinkle did the FOIA, and after some delays, he was able to get the report. And these are the reports we mentioned right here. And it's two large reports, totaling about 60 pages or so. So then ultimately, after some misfires, whatever, that ultimately Keith gave me the report at a state committee meeting back in the spring sometime. So after that, we kind of went through it, sort of vetted through it, try to make sure that it's actually legitimate, that somebody didn't sort of slip him something fraudulent. And once we did enough studying into that, then we determined that it was real. And then after that, we talked to MIGOP leadership, and they were eager to get it forth, to bring it forth. So then we brought it to our favorite Michigan journalist, and her name, of course, needs no introduction, Patty McMurray, from at the time it was 100% Fed Up, and also the Gateway Pundit. And so ultimately it appeared in the Gateway Pundit, and they've done at least 30, maybe up to something like 50 stories. Maybe even 50 stories on it so far. So they took it and really ran with it. So we're still investigating a lot of this information, and there are other things, especially the money tie-ins, that we're kind of navigating through right now and trying to continue to research.
I wouldn't give details of that.
That's right. We're going to hold off on the details of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to reiterate how important this story is, there have been hundreds of stories written on this. Steve Bannon did a number of pieces on it, as well as his staff. We wanted to show you these videos because he goes into even more detail. And one of the things that was exposed during this was a Facebook group that these clerks were in, where they would talk about all these crazy things they were seeing and how they were finding what looked to be illegitimate registrations and things like that, and they would joke about it, but then nobody would do anything about it. So these are things that didn't come to light until a whistleblower brought it to light, and people are willing to come together. Like I said, this is a big team effort, guys, and so people need to know people and need to know how to get to the right place where you can get this publicized and make this happen. And that's one of the reasons why I'm proud to be working with the Karamo administration, because she put that front and center, whereas other administrations have never done that, and they've actually kind of shamed people for talking about this stuff and treated it like it was a joke or like we were a scam. But this is very clearly true and happening, and we have a lot more things coming down the road, but I don't want to maybe hurt the possibility of them having a good outcome by explaining the details right now, because I think anonymity is very key to having success. So.
I just want to add one other thing about the Nessel investigation, if you can call it that. This did go forth to the FBI, which has done apparently nothing about it, and just within the last few days, Just the News, which was John Solomon's outfit. He was an AP reporter for many years, and he puts out Just the News. He recently, through Just the News, put in a FOIA to try to get some inkling as to what the FBI has done, if anything, since 2020, and they were refused. So that's really recent, just within the last few days. So it's going nowhere fast. Now, Nessel, we can look at the way Nessel handled this and compare that with the way Indiana, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State in Indiana handled a similar situation in 2016. So they had a investigation that went into 56 cities in Indiana, and it involved exactly what we're talking about, which is registration fraud, people putting false registrations into the system. And once they go in the system, they're in there until somebody takes them out. And we know from our own Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, that once they go in, not only are they not coming out, but even if somebody before her, like Ruth Johnson, takes them out, she's going to put them back in. So essentially what happened in Indiana was they did it the right way, unlike what Dana Nessel did. So what they did was they said, they went public, and they told all of the clerks in all the townships and all the cities and counties in Indiana, they said there are registrations that are being fraudulently entered into their version of the QVF, Qualified Voter File. They notified the voters, they notified the public. So they put out all kinds of press releases, and they said, do not be victimized by fraudulent activity, and know your check your registrations, make sure there's nothing unusual. So they did everything that Dana Nessel should have done in 2016 in the same exact situation. So we are concerned that we have an Attorney General who is not only using the law as a weapon against her opponents, one of whom, as we mentioned, is sitting right here with us, our friend Marion. She is also ignoring true evidence and scuttling investigations into potential real election fraud by forgery. We also want to point out that Michigan Republican Party, our committee, which is the Election Integrity Committee, we're working on, we have 18 different task forces active right now. Just one of those task forces is the one that dealt with this story, which is the investigations team. And other ones are things like poll challengers, poll workers, election data collection analysis. And if you want to get involved in any of these, and we do need volunteers, we really need volunteers bad, just get in touch with us. My name's Phil, P-H-I-L, so Phil at MIGOP.org. So that's PHIL at MIGOP.org. And we can put you to work. Unfortunately, this is a volunteer thing, but you're doing important work to secure our elections. And so we can put you, and there's things for people who have talents in data collection, data analysis, people, people cleaning up the voter rolls, people who are good at media, who are good at in-person communications, like challengers, whatever, or poll workers. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other things, recruitment and fundraising, training, and litigation team. Anybody knows any lawyers that they're not terrified by Dana Nessel, please step forward, because Ann Howard is just one person. We need more lawyers like her. Thank you very much.
So with that being said, sure. If anybody has any questions, we are definitely here to answer them. Come on down.
I'm thinking that we can invite Chris to...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Chris, come on up. Yes. Question? Come on down.
Well, I have a pretty loud voice.
Well, this is for the video online. It needs to go through the mic.
Chris is going to give his input and...
Can you explain, before you even do that, you won your case, right? So what is the outcome of you winning your case? And that's what we want to hear. You won your case, congratulations, now what? And what did you get by winning your case?
Okay, so the question was regarding the first thing that we talked about, which was the case against the Secretary of State. So there were several illegal things that she did beyond the law, right, in her rule manual for poll challengers. And some of those things included things related to cell phones. I can't remember everything else right now, but there are right now there are about a half a dozen things that as a poll challenger you are allowed to do because the rules that she had given people were found to be illegitimate.
Yeah. Just to give you a real simple example, in the rule book, this is what first caught my attention at the very beginning of this. The rule book said that a poll worker can tell a poll challenger where to stand in the room. In other words, Mr. Poll Challenger, go over and stand in the corner over there. That was applicable. That was allowed. So that's what triggered the whole thing. Reading that line for me. Okay.
So I'm Chris Kyle. I'll give you a little bit about me, and I have something to say about this. So I ran for office in Muskegon County as a commissioner. I had 65% of the vote at the day of the election. I lost after the mail-in ballot came in by 290 votes out of 8,000. Okay. I started an elections committee for the Muskegon County Republican Party. I led that for the 2 years afterwards. We did canvassing. I wrote a 24-page report on the data for Muskegon County. If you'd like to see it, it's fascinating. The registrations in Muskegon look like the climate change hockey stick. Our county gets 400 new people every year because we're not growing, and they added just under 18,000 registrations to our file. Okay, challengers. I challenged in the city of Muskegon, where this event took place, for the last 3 elections. When the new rules came in, they were, Court of Claims said they were illegal about 3 weeks before the election. I was going to challenge 52 ballots because Election Integrity Force, who we've worked for together, was able to get the people's addresses, permanent change of addresses. We ran them against all the AV ballots for that election, November's election, and I was going to challenge 52. I sent the clerk a letter, said, your rules are illegal. You got 52 letters from us. I'm going to challenge all 52. Get ready. If you got any problems with that, let me know. Didn't hear a word from them. First challenge I made, they said, oh, you can't do that. So why not? Well, part of what's in the rules there is that the clerk or the liaison can decide whether or not my challenge is legitimate. That's illegal because I am allowed to challenge under the law the eligibility of a voter who doesn't live in the precinct where the vote occurs. And I had 52 of those that I had reason to believe. So I wasn't allowed. So my challenger rights were violated. They said, turn to page 17. They read me a bunch of gobbledygook that means nothing except oh, we did that up in the clerk's office, you weren't there, and you're not allowed to do it down here. So I have somewhere between 3 and 55 counts of my challenger rights being violated over at least 3 elections. Okay? So.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so what Chris is talking about was permissible versus impermissible challenges. And that was one of the big parts of our case, was that the Secretary of State invented a word which was, she claimed, was an impermissible challenge, which does not exist. And she used it as a cudgel to beat on, to beat on challengers who made legitimate challenges that they didn't like. So that's, I'm very sorry that that happened to you, Chris. So other questions, before we wrap up, because Matt has this, I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. I think it's very imperative that people understand what's happening in their state, and that this is nationally, it's a nationally syndicated story. Now everybody knows about it, and it's going to happen again if we don't do something about this. So we really think that if you guys will help volunteer with whatever organization you want to volunteer with, whether it's EIF, MIGOP, it can be independent, it can be Republican, don't care. We just need to make sure that we have the bodies to make sure that we can get this job done like Sam says, okay? And one of the things that happened just this last week was that your Board of Canvassers for the state passed a rule now that they can now print ballots on demand during the election in each clerk's office. So it's going to be much harder to track them, and that's a problem. And your legislators and your Board of Canvassers don't seem to do anything about it or anything. So we need you guys to take control at a local level, legally and peacefully, and follow the process. So we would really love to have your help, guys, all of us.
Are you guys doing poll challenge okay?
Yes, we are. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Poll Challenger training. We're going to be out at Isabella County this Saturday. There'll also be a Zoom. And again, just if you want to get signed up, Phil, PHIL, at migop.org. And if you don't volunteer, if people are not engaged, then we can't have people like Chris Kayala coming to the fore. If you're engaged, then we'll be able to identify things like he did. And so that's really the moral of the story. Please get involved.
We have training on Zoom on the 2nd, which is a Saturday, the Thursday before. Sorry, the Thursday's the 2nd, the 4th, and the 5th, which is Saturday and Sunday. So sign up for a Zoom meeting. I'll be the one doing the training there. And we need challengers. These kind of issues that we're talking about, we need people to be standing there to see them and to challenge those processes and those ballots.
Thank you very much. That's Phil O'Halloran, Braden Giacobazzi, and Chris Kayala. So it was a bonus. We had the Election Integrity Force and the MIGOP Election Integrity Team. There are